You know, a long time ago, we used to not have cell phones. I mean, we had cell phones, but they weren't like smartphones. Like, if you were lucky back in the day, maybe your cell phone could connect to the internet, and maybe you could Google search or maybe check an email or two. Or, if you're really lucky, it actually had an operating system, which is really weird to say. God, remember a time when phones were fucking bricks? I do. If only there was some kind of software that acted like a smartphone, but before the smartphone was actually a thing. Like some piece of software that would have a bunch of apps on it just like a smartphone would have. Okay, to be fair, a lot of apps I will be mentioning in this video probably won't really be useful to somebody who has a smartphone. But some of these apps could be used as a general purpose, like if you did have a smartphone, so look, it doesn't fully fit, I know. But I'm just using this as an excuse to talk about the Poketch, okay? Are you happy? Ah yes, the smartwatch before the smartwatch was even a thing. The Poketch. Okay, but unironically, I really wanted one of these as a kid. Like, I wish they were real. While the Poketch is not like a real physical object, the apps within it are kind of real. So, you want to talk about those? I'm going to talk about those. Watch me talk about them. For this video, I'm only going to be talking about the Poketch apps that you can obtain in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl actually take away more apps than they add apps. In fact, they only add one app that you actually really never use, and that's for your HM moves, which for the most part, all of these moves will activate automatically without you having to open up the app at all. So thankfully, there's something interesting to talk about in these really bad remakes. Thank fucking God, because I hate them. We're going to talk about every single app the Poketch ever had, including the ones that were never released ever. I don't know why there are two Poketch apps that are Nintendo event exclusive, but I guess we'll just talk about them later in the video when they're relevant, so stay tuned! And because I like my sanity, all the footage you're going to see today is going to come from Pokemon Platinum. Actually, I decided to use some Pokemon Diamond footage after all. For the most part, it's going to be Platinum footage, but there were some parts where I was like, it would be easier if I used my Pokemon Diamond copy, so I guess I'm a liar. Because Pokemon Diamond and Pearl do not have a button to go back, only a button to go forward. I don't know why. You know, you would think that with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, you know, being remakes and all, that they would fix this issue. But nope, they kept the old original Diamond and Pearl designs, which means if you scroll through the Poketch and you pass an app that you actually want to use, well, you gotta scroll through the whole Poketch all over again just to get back to that app. I mean, to be fair, the remakes don't really have that many apps for the Poketch, so I guess it's not a big deal for the remakes, but it's a big deal in the originals because, oh god, there's over 20 of these things. And without further ado, I'm going to be talking about these apps in the order of the app number, just to keep things organized. So the first app in the Poketch here is the Digital Clock. Yeah, it's not really that impressive. After all, it's just a giant clock for your touchscreen. But if you tap it, it does light up, which I guess is kind of neat. I don't know. This was probably more impressive when Diamond and Pearl first came out, because in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, which were the only third generation games to actually have time in them, you could only check the time in the player's room, and that was it. That also may not seem like a big deal to you, because clocks are everywhere nowadays, but back in the day, they weren't so common. Nowadays, any device you grab that has an operating system probably has a built-in clock into it, just for the hell of it. My point is, unless back in the day you were wearing a watch all the time, not every device you had on you, if you had multiple devices on you, had a clock in them. So for the first time in the series, having the time always be on you and conveniently on the touchscreen all the time was really nice. It was no longer like Generation 3 where you had to hunt down the one in-game clock just to figure out what time it was. You would think that in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald that the Pokénap would have the time in it. You know, just like the Pokegear did in Generation 2. But in Generation 3, there was no day and night cycle. So the devs probably didn't see the point of having the Pokénap also work as a watch if there's really nothing to track. Because honestly, time is only in Generation 3 to complete the Pokédex to evolve Eevee, and that's really about it. So while it's actually really convenient that the touchscreen has the time on it, it also shows a shift in priorities from Generation 3 where time was just an afterthought, versus Generation 4, where time was actually a main focus again. Because not only did Generation 4 add back the day and night cycle from Generation 2, but it wasn't just dark when it was night and bright when it was daytime. They also had different color palettes for if it was in the morning or if the sun was setting. It added so much to this world and made it feel way more alive than Generation 3 ever hoped it could be. So on the surface, the digital watch is a very basic app, but it shows that Generation 4 was adding back the day and night cycle into the series for good. And every game after Generation 4 would have a day and night cycle. And the digital watch just being here just symbolizes the effort of making this normalized and not just a one-off gimmick like it was in Generation 2. You know, I didn't think I was gonna have this much to say about a watch in a Pokemon game, but here I am, I guess. That's my life now. Anyways, let's move on to the second app, which is just a calculator. This is another Poketch app that was more convenient in the days before the smartphone, and by having it in the game nowadays, it feels more of a novelty than anything else. This calculator has one cute little Easter egg inside of it, which I thought was actually pretty neat. If the solution you got from adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing is a number that's also in the Pokedex, you'll hear that Pokemon's cry when you press equals if it's in your Pokedex. And I just think that's kind of cool. Also, if you're wondering if you overflow the calculator for some reason it just shows a bunch of question marks, I know it's just showing a bunch of question marks because the number is too large for it to calculate. I'm just surprised it's question marks and not like an error message or something. But for the two people who want to see this calculator just overflowed for some reason, well, there you go. I hope you're happy. Poketch app number 3 is the Memo Pad. Honestly, there's not a lot to say about this app. All you can do with this app is doodle on your touchscreen, and that's about it. I guess you can also jot down notes with this app, but if you swap to a different Poketch app, it will erase everything you jotted down on the Memo Pad, so be careful about that. Another thing to note with the Memo Pad is it also has an eraser. Sometimes the eraser can come in handy, but honestly, I don't see myself erasing anything I've written down on the Memo Pad or really anything I've drawn on the Memo Pad. So the eraser's mileage will vary depending on what kind of player you are. App number 4, the Pedometer. All this app does is track how many steps you've taken in-game. This app will continuously count up your steps until you clear it by pressing the button there. Outside of speedrunning and seeing how many steps you need to take until you hatch your Pokemon egg, this app is more of a novelty than really that useful. Because honestly, you probably forgot about this app, never reset it, and now you boot up your save file and load up the app, and it'll just show you how many steps you've taken throughout your whole journey because you never reset the goddamn thing. Honestly, it's a weird fact I kind of would like to know. So honestly, I think it's a really cool stat that it accidentally tracks if you just don't reset it. For those who are curious, the maximum amount of steps you would have on the step counter is 99,999 steps. And no, I will not be getting that for this video because I don't feel like walking around in circles for who knows how many hours. Also, the number will never go above that number and it won't reset either unless you reset it yourself. And with that, we're done talking about the Pedometer. App number 5, the Pokémon List. Out of all the Poketch apps that exist, this one has easily had the most influence on the Pokemon fanbase as a whole. I'm not kidding about that. On the surface, this app is extremely basic. All this app does is show what Pokemon are currently in your party, if they're holding items, what their HP is at, and if they're fainted. And if you touch one of your Pokemon on the touchscreen there, and they're not fainted, they'll make a little cry, and that's it. So after hearing how basic this Poketch app is, you're probably wondering why this has a huge influence on the Pokemon community as a whole. To understand why this had such a big impact on the Pokemon community, all you have to do is look at people who stream Pokemon, and the people who Let's Play Pokemon. Most of these people have a layout either in their stream or in their video that shows you what Pokemon they currently have in their party, just like the Poketch app. And there are some programs that'll go as far as show you the active party's HP as well, just like the Poketch app. So I guess in some weird way, this Poketch app still lives on beyond Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Number 6, the Friendship Checker. Basically, your whole party of Pokemon float around your touchscreen, and if you hold and tap one of them, it'll let you know how much they love you. The bigger and more hearts that the Pokemon has, the more friendship they have towards you. If the Pokemon has low friendship and you go to touch it, it'll actually move away from you. It's really nice that no matter where you are in the game currently, you can quickly glance at how much friendship your Pokemon has with you. In theory, this is actually very convenient. In execution, oh my god, why are they fucking floating all my touchscreen like this? Because your Pokemon just aimlessly float to wherever the hell they want to go, they'll actually float off screen, which means you can't check their friendship unless you go to a different app and then cycle back to this app, or just wait. I think I understand why the app is like this, because they wanted it to have a little bit more life than just the Pokemon standing there. Plus, if the Pokemon were just stationary, it would probably look a lot like the Pokémon List app, which they probably want to avoid that confusion. But this is just really annoying! Past my one gripe with this app, it still does do its job fine. I just don't understand that lack of quality of life. Also, if you double tap an empty space on the touchscreen while this app is open, all of your Pokemon will just jump in the air like that. I mean, I think it's kind of cute, but maybe that's just me. App number 7, the Dowsing Machine. I don't know what to tell you, this is just Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum's item finder. Basically, you'll tap different parts of your touchscreen to see if there's an item nearby. When I was a kid using this app, I was really confused by it. It took me a while as a kid to understand that the center of this app is where you're currently standing, and each notch on the Dowsing Machine there is how many steps away the item is from you. I genuinely didn't know that for a few years, and I felt really dumb after I figured that out. Also, when I was a kid, I thought you had to rapidly tap the touchscreen to get this app to work. But no, all you have to do is tap the app one time. Well, tap it one time, but if you move a space, you're gonna have to tap it again to get it to work again. Also, something really weird I found out while doing this video is that the Dowsing Machine works slightly differently in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl than it does in Platinum. In Diamond and Pearl, if you are in a cave or dungeon-like area, then and only then in those types of areas, the Dowsing Machine will be way more vague. And to actually reveal the hidden item, you'll have to tap exactly where it is on your Dowsing Machine. Also, the dot to indicate where the hidden item is smaller as well. In Platinum, this is no longer the case. Now, if your ping's radius touches anywhere where a hidden item would be, it will just reveal the hidden item to you, and the dot to indicate where the hidden item is normal size, and it isn't smaller like it is in Diamond and Pearl. I only found out this weird niche fact because I was using my copy of Pokemon Diamond to get some of this footage, so yeah, I discovered this. Anyways, moving on to the next Poketch app. Number 8, the Berry Searcher. I already talked about this app in my berry mechanics video, but sure, let's just talk about it again because it's on topic. Basically, it shows you a whole map of Sinnoh, where you are in Sinnoh, and where any berry is ready to be harvested. Tapping this app will refresh all the berry locations, and if there are any new berries that you can harvest, they will show up on the map after the refresh. App number 9, the Daycare Checker. This app is both really redundant, but also very convenient. Before I get into why this is a redundant app, let me explain to you what it does and we'll go from there. The Daycare Checker allows you to see what Pokemon are currently in the daycare, what levels they currently are, and if they laid any eggs. And just like the Berry Checker, if you tap the app, it refreshes the information. So the only reason why I find this app redundant is because if you're breeding Pokemon, you're gonna be in town anyways. Because when most people breed Pokemon, they usually stick around town, so when the Pokemon lays the egg, you're already in town, so you can just immediately pick it up. So what's the point of constantly refreshing this app if you're already in town anyways? If you really want to know that badly, you can just talk to the daycare man yourself. But I guess it could be argued that tapping the app to refresh once is faster than going through all of his dialogue, so pick your poison. If you use this app for anything, it's probably to check your Pokemon's level while it's in the daycare. So if you're just leaving your Pokemon in the daycare to level them up while you do other things, then I guess this app could be useful to check on their levels while you're gone. With that all being said, this app is fine, I guess. But if you don't use the daycare, this app might as well just not exist for you. App number 10, Pokémon History. Did you forget the last 12 Pokemon that you caught, hatched, evolved, or received through a trade? Well, you're in luck! There's an app that will show you the last 12 Pokemon that you've recently obtained. That's all this app does. Oh, and if you tap the Pokemon, just like with the Team Checker, they'll make their cries, which is kind of cute. Honestly, this app feels like a filler app, if anything. Like, they need to hit a quota for how many Poketch apps there are, and they're like, boom, Pokemon History. Why not? Just put it in there. App number 11, the Counter. This app does exactly as the name implies. You press the button and boom, it counts up by 1 for you. Just like with the Memo Pad, the counter will also reset if you go to a different Poketch app. Now, a normal person would just stop talking about the counter, because what else is there to talk about? Except, I don't know if you noticed, but it can go up to 9999, and I needed to know what happens. So I got to work, and I decided that I'm going to actually touch that button 9,999 times, just to see what will happen. When I started this stupid journey, I thought this would not take that long. Oh god, I was not ready. For the most part, I rapidly touched my touchscreen with one stylus, but I decided to mix it up and tap it with two stylus at the same time. I'm not too sure if that's any faster or not, but my brain likes to believe it was, so we'll go with it. This is my own personal hell. But as I was doing this, I was growing pretty tired. I started to think during this, wondering, was there something different I could have done to make this go by way smoother? And not only that, but having a way that would be less physically straining on me, because I was getting real tired real fast. And just then, I had a breakthrough. Fuck. I thought I was onto something here, like genuinely. But no, apparently strapping a DS stylus to a massage wand won't rapidly touch your touchscreen for you like I initially thought. It'll just make a loud noise and that's it. Well, at least I tried something, so you gotta give me points for that, I guess. So after 2 hours, I finally was able to touch my touchscreen for 9,999 times. And you want to know what happens when you touch that goddamn button for over 10,000 times? It just resets. That's it. I wasted 2 hours of my life just rapidly touching my DS's touchscreen for the most underwhelming result in my whole life just for a video. Anyways, moving on to the next Poketch app. App number 12, Analogue Clock. So do you remember all that stuff I said about the digital watch earlier in the video? You don't? Then why don't you just rewatch the video? Rewatch that part of the video. Because honestly, I just would have said the same thing. Except now it looks more like a traditional clock on a digital watch. Hooray! App number 13, the marking map. So on the surface, this is just the same map from the berry checker, except you can't check your berries on this map. Which at first you might think to yourself, well, you get this map first, right? No, you get the berry checker before you ever get marking maps, so I don't know why this exists half the time. Honestly, I should have made this within the berry checker and made it just a toggle, so if you want to see your normal map, you just press a button and boom, there's your normal map. Or, if you just want to see your berries, you can just press a button and boom, you see where your berries are. My guess, it was way too complicated for them to program it this way, which is the reason why it's two separate apps. But it still doesn't disregard the fact that it feels really redundant. Well, there's gotta be some unique things that the marking map does over the berry checker, right? It does two unique things, but one of those unique things kind of stops being a thing later in the game. So it really doesn't justify itself too much in my opinion. The first unique thing that this app does over the berry checker is that you have 6 little symbols that you can drop wherever you want on the map. Do you want to drop one of your symbols on a city or a town to remember that something unique is there? Sure, why not? You can do that. Do you want to put one in the middle of the void for the hell of it? You know what? You can do that too. You can put these things wherever the hell you want on this app. And if you swap apps, it will actually heap those symbols exactly where you left them. This is one of the few Poketch apps that does not reset when you swap to a different app or reload your save file. But that's not why most people use this app. Oh no, we're gonna talk about roaming Pokemon. Since this video is mostly about the Poketch, I'm just gonna summarize roaming Pokemon for you. Basically, it's a Pokemon that will go to whatever route it wants to after you trigger it to spawn in said routes by talking to an NPC or interacting with the Pokemon on the overworld first. Once it's out there, you have to find it within the grass of the route that's currently staying at. And once you encounter that Pokemon, you only have one turn to catch it before it runs away. Once the Pokemon has fled, it will move to a completely different route within the whole game. And from there you have to hunt it down again until you catch the roaming Pokemon. In the old games, you had to actually manually check your Pokedex every time to see if the Pokemon actually spawned on that route or not. If they're in your Pokedex, only some of these games will allow you to see the Pokemon beforehand. meaning that they won't even be in your Pokedex before you start looking for them, which means you'll have to blindly go through routes hoping you find it. But with the marking map, you can just see it on your touchscreen, which is way more convenient. You also don't need to see these Pokemon from the Pokedex for them to appear on the marking map. So then you're probably wondering, how many roaming Pokemon are in Platinum? Most of the games have 1, maybe 2 Pokemon. With Platinum, there's 5 roaming Pokemon for some fucking reason, and it's terrible. You're only gonna see 4 here because I already caught Mesprit before this video, so you'll get a lot of mileage from the marking map if you're going for those roaming Pokemon. But if you don't, or if you caught them all, the marking map feels really redundant. App number 14. The Link Searcher. This is easily the second most useless app on the Poketch. All this app does is let you know who's using local wireless nearby, and that's it. Like, if you really wanted to know if someone was using the Union Room, the Underground, the Coliseum, or some other form of multiplayer, if you're this close to them, you might as well just ask them. On top of that, it just gives you a number. So the only thing you know is how many people are doing said activity and not who is doing that activity. Also, while getting footage for this, it kept saying that my diamond file was constantly entering and leaving the Union Room when all I was doing was standing still. Yeah, the detection on this thing is pretty terrible. And if you move one single step in game, it stops it for some reason. Why? If this was for checking if your friends were online, I feel like it would be a little bit more justifiable. But for local multiplayer? Yeah, this app is garbage. Just fucking forget about it. App number 15, Coin Flip. You tap the screen and you flip the Magikarp coin. That's it. Heads is the Magikarp, tails is the Pokeball. It's neat to have this if you really want an unbiased coin flip, so I guess there's that. App number 16, the Move Tester. This is an app that if it were in the modern Pokemon games, it would still be helpful. I don't know if you've ever looked at a Pokemon type matchup chart before, but they're a lot to take in. Move Tester simplifies this chart by making it into an interactable app. So now all you have to do is put in the move type that you're curious about, then adjust your opponent's type, and from there let you know how that type matches up between that one type or that dual type. Sadly, this information won't work with the newer games, not just because of the fairy typing, but also because some types have had their resistances changed over the years. But if you're just using this for Gen 4, or you just want to get more familiar with type matchups in general, it's still really good for that. App number 17, the Calendar. Just like with the digital and analog watches, the calendar app was way more useful in the days before the smartphone. Now its only use is to show when I'm recording this video, which is probably either April 10th or April 11th. I don't know yet because while I'm doing the voiceover for this section, I don't have the footage yet. So who knows? Also, you can tap on a certain date to highlight it, or if you really want to, you can tap on every single date. Swapping apps will not reset that highlight, so it stays there until you unmark it, or until it turns into the next month, whichever one happens first. App number 18, Dot Artist. Basically, it's an app for making pixel art. You have 4 shades of gray that you can use, and that's it. If you want to change the brightness of the dot, you have to tap it. Tapping the dot will make it cycle between the 4 shades of gray. When the dot gets to the darkest shade of gray that it could be, then the next time when the dot is touched, it will turn back to the brightest shade of gray. I was gonna record a speed art video of me making this pixel art you see in the background, but guess who forgot to press record when he was making this? That's right, me! So I guess enjoy the still image. It still looks nice, but it's just a still image. Thankfully, this app does not reset if you swap apps or restart the game. This app isn't that practical to use, but it's really fun to use. Honestly, it's just fun to make pixel art on your touchscreen. App number 19, Roulette. Basically, you draw your own little roulette wheel. After you're done drawing your options, you press play, and you can stop it whenever you want. Honestly, this is a really fun Poketch app just to mess with. It sucks that there's no eraser for the roulette wheel, only a button to erase everything. Besides that, it's just a normal roulette wheel, and it's just really fun to mess with this app. I don't know, I like it. App number 20, Trainer Counter. The Trainer Counter is the only app in the whole game that requires a key item to work. If you never use the Poke Radar, then this app will be completely empty. Honestly, I haven't really used the Poke Radar that much, so I'm not super knowledgeable about how it works. But from my basic understanding is that you want to keep a chain going for as long as possible, and you'll find either rare Pokemon or maybe even shiny Pokemon. But I'm not here to talk about the Poke Radar. I'm here to talk about its companion app, the Trainer Counter. This app allows you to keep track of your 3 highest chains with the Poke Radar. And if you're currently using the Poke Radar, it shows you how far you are in your current chain. This is probably some useful information if you use the Poke Radar a lot, but if you don't, you'll probably just cycle through this app every time you see it. I wouldn't call this app useless per se, but its uses are really niche. And just like with Pokemon List and Pokemon History, if you tap the Pokemon on the touchscreen, they'll play their cry for you. App number 21, the Kitchen Timer. Now this is one of the few Poketch apps, just like the calculator, where I can see it being really helpful in an everyday environment. Now I'm not saying that you should just whip out your Nintendo DS with Pokemon Platinum if you wanted a basic cooking timer, because not only would that be really expensive just to buy Pokemon Platinum for just this, but also because the timer only goes up to 99 minutes, which is about an hour and a half. So if you were hoping to use this for something that was over 2 hours long, which to be fair, I don't know why you're using Pokemon Platinum to do that, but okay, sure, why not? But if for some reason you wanted a longer timer, then you're just shit out of luck. Plus, the alarm is just very quiet, so good luck even hearing that the alarm went off in the first place. Okay, me shitting on this app aside, let's talk about how you actually use the app. Because honestly, I'm making it sound a lot worse than it actually is. Basically, you pick whatever time you want, then you press start on the touchscreen there, and it starts the countdown. Once the timer hits 0, Snorlax will slap its belly, letting you know that the time is up. There's also a stop button, but that just pauses the timer. And to resume the timer, all you have to do is press on the start button again. Touching the reset button there will reset the timer. Just like how every other Poketch app resets when you swap to a different app, this one will as well, so that's kind of annoying. So if you want to check a different app while this runs in the background, well, yeah, you can't do that. I'll admit it, I rarely used this app back in the day because I was a dumb teenager. What am I going to use this for? So while I personally did not get a lot out of this app, and now it's more of a novelty if anything, it's honestly kind of cool that this is another app that has a general use outside of the game. App number 22, the Color Changer. We are 22 apps in, and finally we can change the background color of our Poketch screen. This app can change the Poketch's screen to one of 8 different colors. The Poketch's default color is green, but with this app you can change it to yellow, orange, red, purple, blue, turquoise, or even gray. Yeah, there's not a lot to this app, but it feels really nice to have a change of color on your touchscreen there. App number 23, Matchup Checker. So before I get into this app, I wanted to first mention that in Diamond and Pearl, you cannot obtain this app. This was also the first and only app to be given out through an event. However, this is only the case for Diamond and Pearl, where in Pokemon Platinum, this is just a normal unlockable. Alright, with that out of the way, we can actually start to talk about this app. This app allows you to see how likely your Pokemon are to breed with each other. 1 heart means they will breed, but they're less likely to lay an egg. 2 hearts means the Pokemon will breed more likely, and then 3 hearts means they'll breed really often. If the 2 Pokemon can't breed, the love disc will face away from each other and 0 hearts will be shown. Tapping one of the 2 Pokemon on the touchscreen here will swap them out for other Pokemon in your party. If you didn't have a computer back in the day, this app might have been useful to you, but even back when Pokemon Diamond and Pearl were new, websites like Cerebi were already documenting this information, so you could just easily just look this up as opposed to relying on an app for this. But if you didn't want to find this information out from a website, you can still find this out in-game by leaving your Pokemon at the daycare. For the most part, while this app is very convenient to use, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl players aren't really missing out on that much. Remember earlier in the video when I said there were 2 apps that were Nintendo event exclusive? Well, I was wrong. These final 2 apps were never released ever, but people speculate that these apps might have been available at a Nintendo event if the events actually happened. But while unreleased, both of these apps are still in the game's code, and with the power of some cheating, we'll be able to actually use them today. Which brings us to app number 24, the Stopwatch. I know I haven't really commented on some of these apps having Pokemon theming, but I really love the idea of a Voltorb being this impatient. He's just an impatient little guy! Tapping the Voltorb will start the Stopwatch, and to stop it, all you have to do is tap the Voltorb again. And if you hold down on the Voltorb button, he blows up! Not only is this a neat little animation, but it also resets your stopwatch. Too bad you'll never see this animation because this app went unused. It sucks that this app went unused because it would have went well with the other general use Poketch apps. It feels even weirder knowing that we have the kitchen timer, which is the exact opposite of the stopwatch. But instead it lies dormant in the game's code, forever unused. Well, unless you have an action replay like I do. And finally, the last app and the last unused app. App number 25, the Alarm Clock. It feels really weird that the last app they ever made was a fucking alarm clock. And they never released it! Just like a normal alarm clock, you input a time you want the alarm to go off, and once it gets to that time, the alarm will go off. The alarm will continuously go off for that whole minute. The alarm will only stop if you press the button to make it stop, or if that whole minute goes by. If the latter happens, then the alarm will still be set, and it will go off again once it hits that same exact time you inputted it earlier when it was set up. Interestingly enough, this alarm is not reset when you swap to a different Poketch app, but the alarm will only go off if the alarm clock is your active app, and it won't go off if you're in another app. Also, when the alarm is set, this app will work similarly to the digital watch. In fact, in a very weird way, if the alarm clock was actually released, you could kind of see this as an upgrade to the digital watch. Well, in the sense that if you use it, it actually has more functions than just telling you the time. Not many more functions, but hey, at least it has more than one use. While this app could be useful to remind you to do things at certain times while you're playing the game, but I personally can't see myself leaving my DS on overnight with the volume all the way turned up just to use this as an actual alarm clock to get up. But I doubt it's there to wake you up in the morning like a real alarm clock would have. Though the alarm itself is pretty loud for something that's coming out of my DS speakers. It's way louder than the built-in DS alarm clock, which I bet a lot of you didn't know was a thing until I just mentioned it. And with that, we've talked about all 25 Poketch apps. So there's no more apps to talk about. We're done, right? Right? We're not! When researching this video, I found something that I didn't see a lot of documentation on, so we're not going to go super in-depth about it, but we are going to talk about it. I hold in my hands right now probably one of the more rare pieces of Pokemon merchandise. That's right, in Japan, they released an actual Poketch. And just like the Poketch in-game, it does have apps on it, so we're going to briefly talk about them. And I mean only brief because I can't read Japanese. And Google Lens does not work with this thing. So I ended up asking a Twitter mutual of mine to translate some of this into English for me because he offered, and oh god, if he didn't, I would have set a password up on the watch that would have locked me out of the watch. I'm not kidding. I don't know why this has a password system on it, but it does. But once the watch is fully set up, it has 11 apps on it, or 12 if you count the settings for some reason. Some of the apps on here are the same as the ones in-game, like the counter, the coin toss, the kitchen timer, and the roulette are all here. Although some of them appear to be a little bit more downgraded than their in-game counterparts. The calendar is also here, but it only shows the month, day, and year. And that's right, it does say 2020 for the year, because that was the latest year I could put on here, because it doesn't go past 2020. To be fair, outside of me, who would be using this goddamn thing in 2023? So I don't blame them for not making it past 2020. There's an app on here where you catch Pokemon, and outside of selecting your path when there's a fork in the road, there really isn't much to this app. There's also an endless runner minigame, but I really couldn't tell you what's going on here. There's even a Pokedex on here, There's also an app on here to pick some berries. I have no idea what this is used for, but if I had to guess, it's probably used for that Pokemon catching minigame. Outside of an app that shows you what Pokemon you've caught, there really isn't that much more to talk about with this thing. Sorry that this wasn't a super in-depth look at this Poketch toy. I honestly just wanted to mention it because I thought it was crazy that this thing exists at all. But now that I've gotten that out of my system, we are finally done talking about the Poketch. The Poketch was such a weird idea. There's probably a bunch of different things they could have done with the DS's extra screen space there, but making the touchscreen into a watch with multiple different apps was a pretty smart move. If it was just a normal watch, it probably would have felt like a waste of screen space. But instead, we got what's probably the most memorable use of the touchscreen throughout the whole Pokemon series. After this, the touchscreen was mainly used as a shortcut to get into multiplayer content, and might have had some menu options attached to it, but nothing as memorable as the Poketch would have been. Generation 7 were the last games to be released on a system that had an extra screen, and they ended up only using that extra screen for a mini-map, and that was it. So while not all of the Poketch's functions are that useful, and most of them are there for just the novelty of being there, I honestly won't forget it because it's just so weird. Nowadays, a lot of the more useful apps that the Poketch had are on smartphones, but back in the day, it felt really cool that your Pokemon game could do all this stuff. It felt like there were so many different things you could use these apps for, and it was amazing. And while it's not useful anymore, I will always remember every single use I got out of the Poketch. It's easily the most memorable part about Generation 4 as a whole. Hi, welcome to another Endslate. This video took so long to make. Holy shit, I'm so glad it's over. I feel like these only take longer and longer to make. Okay, this was supposed to be a short idea, just like a really short idea just to go into the Poketch and talk about it. But then I did more and more research, and then I thought I found something that wasn't on Wikipedia, and it kinda wasn't. And then I wanted to talk about like the actual Poketch watch, and yeah, now we're here. Holy shit. I want to start off by personally thanking Snarky for letting me use their footage, because I needed to find like some Let's Play footage or something to talk about the Poketch thing. And I wanted to use more, but I didn't want to like reach out to random people, and I also just didn't know like exactly where to look for footage like that. So Snarky had what I was looking for, so I just used their footage with permission. Thank you for that. Holy shit. And I also want to thank my Japanese Twitter mutual. He helped me out a lot. He offered to translate some of the Poketch stuff for me, and so I would send him like photos, and then he would translate it for me, and I appreciate it so much. Like, give his art a follow if you can. He does really good JoJo fan art, and that's how I found out about him. But yeah, I don't know when the next video's coming out. I'm going to FWA after I post this, so that'll be a thing. I turned 28. I guess that'll also be a thing. I don't know. After this video comes out, I'm not going to be working on stuff for a hot minute. But hopefully it won't take too long to get back into making stuff again. At least I hope. Here's hoping. Because I did take a few months off because I was job searching, and then a few other things in my life came up where I had to deal with that first. And I also was just not burnt out, but life was dragging me by the fucking shins or something. I don't know, but thanks to anybody who watched this video. I appreciate it so much. Do the usual YouTube shit if you're still here. Like, seriously, I mean that a lot. But yeah, I'm just glad to have another video out there. It feels so fucking good to have this out there. I don't think you understand. Next time might be another Pokemon video. I was working on a Zelda video, but then I scrapped that to work on this video because I found the Zelda video to be hard to talk about, and I'd also have to make new assets just for that video, so I ended up just going with Pokemon again, you know, because I'm predictable. But yeah, thanks to everybody who helped, thanks to everybody who watched. I got nothing else for you. Bye! Also, I think this is my longest video now. Holy shit.